And today I'm welcoming Dr. Giorgio Varesco from the University of Montreal, and he's here to talk about his work, particularly around speed skaters and jet lag, but also his work in general. So, welcome to the podcast, Dr. Varesco.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Now, tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up in this field of research.
So I'm essentially exercise physiologist. So I'm a sports scientist as well,
Mm,
because now I'm working on mainly in sports. Uh, I started with a PhD in France at the University of Saint-Étienne, working on mainly neuromuscular fatigue, neuromuscular aging and fatigue. And then this is where I started to do research on fatigue, which is my mainly expertise.
mm,
And then when we think about fatigue, mainly or classically, we linked it, in my field at least, to the neuromuscular systems, so force loss after exercise. But when we speak with neurologists, neuroscientists, or even psychologists, they will, of course, tell you that is more about the psychology, the perception. Uh, and then there was also an aspect of it's not just physical. It doesn't come just from physical tasks. It also comes from mental tasks. So my first postdoc was in the University of Nantes, working on the mental aspects of fatigue. Uh, so it involved also a little bit more psychology. So it was a merging neuromuscular physiology and psychology. And then I, in my pursuit and my interest of fatigue, led me to my current position as a postdoc at the SAMS, which is the uh, in English, I don't know in English, but in French is the Centre des études en médecine du sommeil, and it's like a sleep lab. Is the probably one
right.
of the biggest sleep lab in Canada. And here I'm studying the relationship between fatigue, sleep, and performance, because I'm also affiliated with the National Institute of Sport of Quebec. And this is essentially where we get to the study that caught your interest. So before continuing, I have to read my disclaimer statement. So all claims expressed are on my own and doesn't not necessarily represent those of my affiliate organization. And then my funding, I'm supported by funds from the PRIDI program of the National Institute of Sport of Quebec, the Partenariat program of the University of Montreal, and I'm also a MyTax accelerated fellow. Um, so yeah, I work in two labs, essentially the lab of Dr. Guido Simonelli and the lab of Dr. François Buzen. And one is more the sleep scientist, and the other one is more like the scientific responsible of the National Institute of Sport of Quebec. Um, so yeah, we're just combining sleep fatigue expertise with to apply for sports scientists to improve performance in athletes. This is mainly what I do.
Mm. So you had the sleep performance in particular and looking at fatigue. And how did that lead to, and the article that came up for me was the speed skaters, and where were they competing? It
So they
was
were competing in Japan,
right,
and
long way from Canada.
oh yeah, long way. Absolutely, you cross 13, I guess 13 time zones, and well, the approach, the process that led to this work was kind of is typical of the National Institute of Sport of Quebec, but it's not typical in all contexts. So essentially, is the coach that express an interest or a need, And then I think like that the responsible for for example, if it's the coach of speed skating, in this case, they will go to the sports scientist that the National Institute of Sports
Mm.
provides to the federation, and the sports scientist knows that people knows where to find us. So they had this question about how we optimize jet lag for competition, and because the World Championship this year was in Asia, I think
Hmm.
in Beijing, and they essentially arrive Sunday and they compete the next weekend, starting from Friday.
Right.
And it's where you have to perform at your best. It's not
Hmm.
something that you can underperform. So one question was like, how are we doing right now? So this is like the goal of the paper, how they are usually coping with jet lag. And then uh, moving forward, another question that they made is like, okay, now we got your data and we want to know how to optimize those results that you provide us. So for example, in the paper that you read, they stabilized their sleeping duration after 5 days. It doesn't mean that everything adjusted in five
Mm.
days. It just means that the sleep started, like, for example, I don't remember the exact numbers, but they slept 7 hours the first night and 8 hours the fifth night. And there was a progressive 10-minute increase night by night. This is what the model estimated.
Mm.
And starting from the fifth night, there was kind of a breaking point. So if you look further, so sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, they always sleep 8 hours. So if we think that this pattern tells us something about the adaptation process, probably they adjusted that the biggest adaptation occurred within those 5 days. And then another goal was like, okay, so this is not maybe not sufficient, but we don't have much outcomes. We don't have much data collected. We had just accelerometry. So with accelerometry, we can uh, compute some sleep metrics and also activity metrics. So this is essentially what we can use. And to provide a bit more context, so accelerometry is essentially a watch that you are wearing, and they
Like a
have
smartwatch kind of thing,
exactly,
like a
exactly.
Fitbit, that
So
sort of.
yeah, that sort of things. I think Fitbit has an accelerometer, but those things that are medical degree devices are made for science essentially.
Right.
So they're not fancy. They're kind of ugly also. This is why we have some resistance from athletes to wear them sometimes. Uh, but they just have on board. They have a little battery and of course some memory stock of some size. I don't. It depends on the model, of course, an accelerometer, and then maybe yeah, they have sometimes a light sensor, so for like environmental light sometimes, but
Right. So is this the background
not
light that
all.
they're in, so to speak?
Sorry.
The light meter, is that the background light that they're in, the level of
Mhm.
illumination? Yeah.
Exactly.
So whether they're in
Yeah,
a dark room or in a bright
exactly.
outdoors.
Yeah. So when analyzing the data, this will essentially help us to identify the lights off moment that should correspond in theory with the moment where they want to sleep. And
Yeah.
then, of course, when you wake up, you switch on the light. So we can identify like the time in bed at least, help us because it's not always that simple. Um, so we had those accelerometry data, and then we got some performance related metrics and training related metrics because of course they arrive there but they don't slack off for 5 days. They train. So we got them their workload, an index of workload that they did during the training. And then we got some neuromuscular, so a jump height, which is like a very broad index of neuromuscular performance. Um, So this went in the direction of suggesting that there was a progressive adaptation, at least until the first competition, which
Mm,
happened like in day 6. And
right.
with accelerometry data, what we observe, just to resume a bit the study, then I will go very, very quick. Um, but what we observe is that they moved the hour, the exact timing where they focused their physical activity, which is, of course, with accelerometry, it's not a very good tool for speed skating, because I don't know if you ever watch a competition, but they tend to put their hand behind their back.
Oh,
So
yes,
yeah,
they
this is
do.
a tool. Yeah, so this is a tool that detects vibration, and the more you like think about running, how you swing your arms.
Yeah. You don't
Uh,
do that speed skating.
Exactly. So you kind of
Oh,
see when they are on ice, it kind of shows that okay, this is weird because they are doing for exactly 1 hour and a half low level of activity, and then they resume their normal. So this is where we put like okay, we estimate that here where they were doing like the training, and then we had the training hours. Um,
right. That's something I hadn't thought of. There was an inaccuracy in the accelerometry because it's saying there's low level activity when actually they're training quite hard,
yeah,
but
exactly.
they're just not moving their arms when they train.
Yeah, exactly. So we don't have we were careful in discussing those metrics related to the quantity of physical activity. But in
Mm,
any case, the timing of physical activity, this is an index that is pretty robust. I will say it's a real result that we have. And so what essentially happens is that uh, the first day, so sorry, to resume, so to sum up, it better represents spontaneous physical activity, which is good for us because it's a very important side gaber. And maybe, yeah, you know, maybe what I'm talking
mm.
about, and probably
Yeah.
you already mentioned it in previous episodes. So physical activity helps you resynchronize your circadian rhythm. And so we have this index of where the physical activity was mainly clustered. And it moved from evening hours to midday, around 1
Right.
p.m., 3 p.m. So we got those two results. First, that the sleep evolved during across the first 5 days, and
Right.
we saw there was an adaptation, of course, in this bedtime, so lights off and lights on. So when you arrive there, you're tired, so you're going to sleep
Mm,
at 9 p.m.
yeah.
But then you're getting used to the local hour. So you're from 9 p.m. you return to your normal schedule that you had in Canada, that they had in
Yes.
Canada, which was around 10:30, 11 p.m.
Right.
So, and then at the same time, the first day they were going to bed at 9 p.m., but they woke up at
Mm,
like, let's say at 5, which is very
yes.
unusual, and they didn't fall asleep
No.
afterward. So they definitely wake up at 5. And then the more in the next 5 days, they pass from waking up at 5 to waking up like after 7. So
Mm,
the bedtime was delayed by 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, but the wake up time was delayed by 2 hours and
yeah.
something. So this makes that every day they increase their sleep time by 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So we have those, well, let's say three results. So the physical activity that moved from evening to midday, then the bedtime and the wake up time schedule, we had a shift. And then of course the result is like this increase in total sleep time. So this was
Now
like the study. Yeah.
you mentioned it took about 5 days for them to recover.
Hmm.
And normally, I've heard the recommendation it's an hour per time zone crossed. You crossed a
Yeah.
lot more than five time zones.
Oh
I think you
yes.
crossed at least 10, I think.
Yeah. More
So
than 10,
you,
like it's,
yeah, more, I mean,
13,
I'm
12. Yeah.
13. Yeah. So you, reduce the recovery time from 13 days to 5, which
Yeah.
is quite. So, what were some of the measures that you used with the speed skaters to get them to recover?
Uh, so for this first study was just an observation, and we expected exactly what you're saying. So we expected around 10 days or 11 days or
Hmm.
12 days. This is why we have like we don't evaluate, we didn't evaluate just the first 5 days. We focused on the first 5 days because this is where the changes happened and then it
Right.
stabilized. But we have data for, I think, 2 weeks because they normally the competition are coupled. So in that they go to Japan, but maybe they have like a competition in South Korea, which is
All
not much
right.
of a time change. So we assume that
No,
okay, more or less
that
is the
would be
same.
fine for them. Yeah.
Um, but then we got these weird results about okay, so everything happens since the first 5 days. Why? So we can just speculate, right? We don't have data to support one hypothesis or the other, and could be as you probably mentioned that in previous episodes, but could be because they are used to it. So
Mm.
they are accustomed to this kind of like big jet lag.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
they're young and fit as well. They're not middle-aged
yeah,
business travelers, which are
yeah,
the people I tend to deal with.
yeah. So they were very fit. This could help a lot.
They'd be absolutely fit.
And I think also I have no data. It's just s- pure speculation here, but maybe something weird happens when you totally switch the day to night time. So here, or like in Canada, what is like 6 a.m. in
Yeah.
Japan is 6 p.m.
Yeah.
So shouldn't matter if you travel eastward or westward.
No.
So this could also change a bit the rules of the games. I don't
Mm.
know. I'm not sure.
No.
Probably like what I wrote in the paper. Okay, it was more likely they're custom and they're athletes, so they're focused in a very controlled condition. So nutrition
Yeah.
is controlled. Um, Training schedule is controlled. Maybe some also a little bit the social schedules because I don't think that if you have a World Cup coming up like in 2 days, you're going to like a club in the evening
No.
drinking stuff. So
Hope not. Save
hopefully,
that for after the competition.
yeah.
All one thing that came up in my research, now I don't know if it applies. I kept getting the phrase "running on adrenaline" from people I interviewed, and I'd imagine
Mhm.
if you've flown across the world to a big contest, there would be that factoring in that sort of adrenaline. Like I have to focus, I have to perform. I've got this contest.
Mhm.
Could that have been part of it?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, a thing that fascinates me is that I can't stop thinking that it will be more true if you're not in a team, because a team could be supportive, not just the team, meaning the nutritionist, the coach, so the staff, but also other athletes being all in the same situation can be like supportive. I it's just, of course, it's a very psychological assumption or a thought that I got, but maybe don't stress that much if you are in this kind of like let's say familiar. It's an unfamiliar environment, external
Hmm.
environment, of course, but you're in a sense you are also in a familiar environment in the way that with the people that you interact,
Hmm.
you don't have to stress. If your focus is on businessmen, I'm so premise
Yes.
premise. I never work with businessmen. I don't know. I'm speaking about my experience. For me, it's very stressful to uh, go to the ticket office, get the ticket for everywhere, understand where is the hotel, get to the when I was doing competition, was also going to the jury meeting for the competition and doing the travel, organize everything. They don't have this kind of stress because the staff takes care of it.
Yeah.
And there is a very fascinating series of study by Antonia Rossiter, which is she works at the Irish Sports Institute, and
Right.
I think it's the only one who not just studied jet lag in athletes, but also in the support staff. So
Right.
that was, yeah, I was very fascinated by that the fact that of course of course you have to study also the support stuff. They might not be a big number, but they are a key part of the adaptation to jet lag for athletes.
Yeah.
So I guess in a way, maybe businessmen are luckier than maybe me as a tourist, because they maybe have a secretary who takes care of like the schedule and the plane ticket. You know better than me. You can tell me
Mm.
like what was your experience
It's
because you were a businessman.
my experience has been that people will organize things for you, but you do it by yourself. So, for example, when I went to Buenos Aires, I had all my flights booked, but I was navigating in Santiago, a change of flight. No one speaks English there. It's in the heart of Spanish-speaking South America. And so I can make out bits of Spanish, but
Oh yeah,
and
stressful,
then
huh?
landing in Buenos Aires, I was being collected in a limo, which I'm glad someone arranged it because the airport is a long way out of the city and there's not good public transport, and I would not want to attempt public transport there. I had a driver take me into my hotel, but again, navigating that. So you
Yeah, so
have people organizing, but they're not usually with you. You're usually doing things by yourself
yeah. So in
for
that
most of the
sense,
time.
the athletes are a bit in a better environment.
Yeah, a
Uh,
bit more protected.
yeah, actually, about anxiety, we have some data because anxiety or like the accumulation or noradrenaline should at least increase your uh, sleep onset latency. So the time that you spend in bed without being able to fall asleep, essentially. Um,
Hmm.
I don't know, your heart rate is like you're anxious,
Yeah,
you can't sleep essentially. Um, because the day of the competition, when the competition happened, they slept the night that followed, they slept less. So
mm,
this
because
could
they
be
had that adrenaline.
the adrenaline from the competition because and could also be, of course, could also be the fact that they have competition probably in the evening, they finish later, and so they
Yeah,
go to bed later. But in theory, they can also wake up later, which didn't
yeah.
happen really. So
Mm,
maybe anxiety was most present actually
right.
during the competition. Um, Probably we don't have the numbers, but maybe it was this permanent anxiety was more present in young athletes that has like to or I I don't know, maybe because they are less experienced, is their first World Cup competition,
Yeah,
or what I can think of is also athletes that have this pressure of I have the title of world champion and I have to defend it. So every competition I should do my best, and this causes stress that could affect sleep. Of course, we don't have data about that. We are always like trying to get new data
yeah,
to help athletes. But again, this is maybe those latter factors are more of a sport specific thing, but maybe you experience more stress during your first
yeah.
travel rather than like maybe 10 travel after where you
That makes
okay, see
sense.
you
Y-
stuff.
That makes sense. And taking you meaning to the phrase running on adrenaline. So, how did the speed skaters do in the contest?
uh in competition, you mean?
Yeah,
How they did
how
how
they did, how
oh
they performed.
Oh, well, when you speak about Canadian speed skaters, you're dealing probably with the best athletes in this discipline, especially
Yeah,
so yes, I didn't mention it. I mentioned now, so I'm sorry. It was short track speed skating because there is
right.
long track and short track. Like I work with the short track because short track
Okay,
is based in Montreal and long track is based, I think, in Calgary. Um,
right.
so we just got to work with the short track. But during those years, there were some amazing athletes that got some like world titles, gold medal competition. Uh, Saint-Gelais is one of them. Then Kim Boutin. I can mention like several of them.
Right. So they did well. So
Yeah, they
Canada
did
did
well.
well.
Kind of
Right.
actually, this is another analysis that we did is because of course, as I said, as I mentioned previously, we didn't had much. We just had those watches
Yeah.
and then the some muscular index. So we got the we got those race data, okay, and we wanted to see if a race that they did in, for example, in Germany, which of course is less time crossed during the same
Yes.
season, they had a better performance, systematically better performance that crossing more time zones. Okay.
Right.
Or maybe we compare competition done in Montreal in the same season.
Right.
And so no, there was no difference, no systematical difference, no relationship with the time zone crossed. Uh, but maybe again, this is why I hypothesize that maybe switching that day with night changes the rule of the game. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Or that they've overcome their jet lag so successfully
Yeah.
that you didn't. And Australia isn't known for our speed skaters apart from Stephen Bradbury. But
Yeah,
so that
everyone
you'll
knows the
so
story.
excuse my ignorance around speed skating. I do also want to touch on your work with the Paris Olympics. Um, you worked with the Paris Olympics. Tell us a
No,
bit.
not
No, you had the
no. So no, I we work again. We worked again with the same team of
right.
speed skaters, uh, because they wanted to know. Okay, now we know that maybe in 5 days we are getting some like
Yeah,
the thing ended, but then we want to have like want to optimize that. So of course 2 day is better than 5, 3 days is better than 5. So
yeah.
can you shorten it? Like can we make it 2 days or
Wow.
3 days? And
So really compress that adjustment
yeah,
period.
yeah, so it was kind of challenging because of the few outcomes that we had. So we just essentially what we told them is that okay, we want to be data driven process, and we will use the data that we got on you. So in June, where they were in a perfect environment for training, they trained it here. They didn't had any competition, any travel, anything. They were in a like say baseline mode. We
Mm.
measured their sleep habits. So um, what they did, we just measured their sleep habits for 14 days, and we got their usual bedtime for each athlete's bedtime, wake up time, and a lot of other data, but that are not relevant for what I'm going to say. Then they had this question about we want to optimize jet lag for the world championships, and luckily they had the perfect uh, they had the perfect context to try those recommendations before the championships because they have a World Cup in December in Asia. So we
Oh,
used it. Yeah, exactly. So the we used this opportunity. We spoke with the coaches. Hey, Alex Renoroy, which is the sports scientist at the federation. She's doing an amazing job, and we planned some recommendation that she could transmit to the coaches and the athletes to implement. So what we did was um, we asked them to resist the sleep drive a bit because I know that you arrive like at the hotel, you want to sleep, even if it's 9 p.m., which is what we observed in the previous data collection. So, but please resist, please try to resist and go to sleep and try to sleep at the usual bedtime. So the usual bedtime back in June that they
Right.
measure. Um, so to each athlete, we provide, okay, your usual bedtime is this one, your usual bedtime is this one. And we also provide the wake up time if in case they want to set an alarm, but this was like secondary. And and then we asked to the coach if it's possible to have all trainings happening in the first days around 1 p.m., which is like where the physical activity was when adaptation was gone at the 5 days. So we just asked those two things, and from the preliminary data that we analyzed, it emerged that we were successful, at least in
Mm.
obtaining 8 hours of sleep time directly the second night that they
Yeah.
passed in Asia. So of course it doesn't correct. You know better than me. It's difficult to obtain full adaptation in 48 hours, right?
Yeah.
But at least they don't accumulate sleep debt. So sleep debt is less of a problem. They are
Mm.
obtaining maybe sufficient is a very delicate word to use. I will use it, but
Yeah.
take it with a pinch of salt. They maybe obtain sufficient sleep starting from night two, and then they can focus. It's the best that they can do regarding sleep and maybe fatigue because uh, um, yeah, they're like we
So
don't have any more outcome.
that's really the power of scheduling to adjust to the new time zone, really, isn't it? Scheduling your
Yeah.
sleep and scheduling your wake up, scheduling those sort of power. So that's a very powerful technique. And you mentioned earlier that um, the athletes didn't always want to do things. We talked about the glasses with the orange lenses to exclude light,
Yeah.
and they did not want to wear them in public.
It's kind of, yes, it's challenging, but I can understand them because I honestly am one of them. So I would do the same if some random guy, some random Italian guy with a beard and a PhD comes to me with a weird looking glasses and told me, okay, wear this in public, it will help you. And I will say, maybe it will help me, but I will feel
They won't
very
really want to.
uncomfortable to wear it,
Yeah,
especially in a era that we're living in the social media era. So everything is
that's
on
it.
Facebook,
So
athletes,
being
sponsor and stuff.
photographed with wearing these orange lens glasses could look a little bit odd, to say the least.
Uh, Actually, making them looking cool could be a good business opportunity. Maybe
It could be.
we don't know,
Okay.
but for example, we are working with baseball um, now, and it's an unrelated example, but it's still jet lag. We're doing the same thing. They go to Japan to do
I,
uh,
I was
some
reading
competition.
about people playing baseball in Japan. It's big there. Uh,
I have no idea.
there's a Japanese, there's an American, a player on an American team with Japanese heritage, and
Oh,
they went to Japan and you know the Japanese crowds turned out for this guy.
wow.
So it's well, we're seeing a lot of this now. We've got rugby league teams from Australia playing in Las Vegas. We've
Hmm.
got American gridiron players from Los Angeles and Chicago playing in Melbourne. It seems to be a thing now where it's not just the Olympics and the World Cup, but people are coming from all over the world to play
Wow.
um, a
Baseball.
game in a very different time zone to sort of make their sport global.
Okay, so yeah, it's not a thing in Europe. So this is like why I'm so ignorant in baseball, and
Yeah,
uh,
not much of a
I
thing in Australia either.
okay, okay. I'm glad that we understand each other.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, so the it was a women team of the I think is the Academy Baseball Canada for the women. So they are training young women to get a professional contract, and within this program they go around to compete. And the women team was going in Japan, and we asked them, can we do some measures with you, some additional measures that could provide us more data to understand better the if like this 5 days to plateau applies also to baseball
Yeah.
essentially. I doubt, but because the team is larger, it's more difficult, but maybe I don't exclude it. Um, Still, I'm very cautious with my hypothesis, so I still keep my hypothesis of 10 days off for this team. Okay. But maybe they adapt quicker, I hope.
They could
And
well
then,
be.
yeah, so apart from that I have no data because they're still there. Uh, One thing that I remember is that we have those portable EEG device.
Oh,
So there are sleep trackers that you wear
oh.
around
So
your
they
hand, like
wear sleep trackers with their ECG.
EEG, so
Oh,
electroencephalography.
EG.
Yeah, so it's
Right.
just two channels. It's just two channels, so not much, but you can still
Right.
sleep staging, I guess. Um, but again, it's like a headband, okay? And the first resistance that I count is like, I don't know if all athletes will wear that because it's kind of, again, it's like
Yeah.
kind of ugly.
There's resistance. Yeah. I
Yeah, but I
don't know
can
that I'd
ask.
be keen to wear a headband to bed.
Yeah, yeah. But so if I have to choose, if someone gives me the option between orange glasses and a headband, I will choose the headband because they kind of look a bit better than the orange glasses. But still, I understand why athletes are
Yeah.
resistant to to this kind of to this kind of intervention.
Yeah.
It's not that of course, it would be optimal if they wear those things because it could
But
definitely
yeah.
work. But
It
yeah.
is all about compromises and what people
Mm,
can advise.
yeah.
Okay.
Do
Well,
you think
thank you
that?
very much for your time. And
No,
that,
thank you.
yeah, it's a lot of useful work and helping people adapt to within 5 days flying from Canada to Japan. That is quite impressive, and I'm glad that the speed skaters did well. So
Yeah.
thank you again for joining us here.
No, thank you very much for your invitation.
Thank you. Okay.